Hello, World History 2 students. Today we are going to be starting with a little activity here. This is called the Urban Games, and this is how I'm going to introduce you to our next topic, which is industrialization, and this has to do with topic 4. Right now, you have papers on your desk that are of a larger size, and you also should have a key somewhere nearby as well. I'm only grading 2 things on this activity. The first one is that you have the first one is that everything is of the proper size according to the key. So if you're drawing a house, it should be almost exactly, as close as you can get it, exactly the same size as the house. Okay. The second thing that I'm grading is that you include everything on this sheet of paper that I'm going to tell you. Okay. So we're going to start off with the first part here. Let's see if I move my face out of the way. So you are going to be drawing all of these things on your paper. The year is 1700 and the nation is England. The scene is a rural village. Your village, as we start out, it needs to include the following items. First of all, there needs to be a river across your paper connecting east to west, and the river should be about an inch wide. Okay, so an inch wide is probably on your key. It's probably about as wide as your factory, okay? That's how wide your river should be, and it should be connecting east to west, so going across the long way of your paper. On this river, there's a simple wooden bridge. The wooden bridge is on your key also. It's kind of it looks like a small little tube with triangles in it. You also need to have 2 roads. These roads are just lines, or you can make them look more like roads. You can be creative with this. And one road goes north to south, meaning it has to exit or enter at the north and exit or enter at the south. You also need to have one going east to west. It can zigzag and whatever. It doesn't have to be straight, but it does need to go from east to west and then a road going from north to south. You also are going to create a commons that's about 4 by 4 inches. This is basically just a square on your paper that is 4 by 4 inches. You then want to draw 10 houses, 1 church, 1 cemetery, 1 store, 1 pub, 1 coal mine, and 50 trees. As far as trees, the trees are not located on your key, but they can you can just draw a simple tree where it's like a line with the lines coming off of it, you know what I'm saying? Or you could draw like more legitimate trees if you want to be more artistic about it, that's fine. Roads need to be no wider than 1/4 of an inch, and the river must be no wider than 1 inch. I also recommend putting a compass on your map, labeling it north, south, east, and west. At this point, you also probably want to develop some kind of theme for your village. Maybe you're going to make like a Lorax village or the Simpsons, Springfield? Is that what it's called? Springfield. Or you're going to make, I don't know, just whatever theme you want. Lord of the Rings, whatever you're into. And you also need to give it a name, okay? Don't put anything in the commons also. Now, you have to use a pencil on this. That is also part of your grade. I left that off. You need to use a pencil, and you should draw very lightly because it's quite possible that you will erase things. Okay, I'm going to go around and help you as you're drawing these things and answer questions. But in the meantime, I'm going to read about life in your village, okay? So whatever theme you pick, the main idea is that this village is a village in England. So I'm going to read this for you. The year is 1700 and the nation is England. The scene is a rural village. Life here in our rural English village is similar to other villages throughout Europe in the 18th century. Change traditionally comes very slow. People moved at a much slower pace and had access to very little information about the world outside of their village. London, England's largest city and one of the 2 real cities in Europe, had a population of about 750,000 in 1750. 3 out of every 4 Englishmen were rural and lived in small villages like this one. The average village was inhabited by about 200 to 400 people. The tallest structure in the village was the church. And the religion of England was Anglican, the Church of England. Although your churches, you make them whatever kind of church you want, but just keep in mind, England has the Church of England. Home life and work life were closely integrated, as most work was done in nearby fields or in the home of perhaps an adjoining workshop. The family was an economical unit as well as a social unit. Every member of the family worked very hard, from sun up to sundown. Even small children had chores. The homes of villagers were very small, and they had earthen floors, meaning dirt floors, and inadequate lighting and ventilation in their houses. All members of the family slept in the same room. Can you imagine that? Sleeping with your parents and your siblings all in the same room. And sometimes they shared living quarters with the livestock. Not only that, you have your cow in there with you as well. Sons worked with their fathers, farming and tending livestock, while the daughters worked with their mothers, cleaning, cooking, sewing, and doing other domestic chores. Life expectancy was slightly over the age of 40 years old. That's how far you would make it in life. Most people married in their teens, and they had babies before they were 20 years old. In fact, most of the ladies in this room, the freshmen, would probably be married by now. It was common for women to die during childbirth, so the average marriage lasted about 15 years. Stepmothers and stepfathers were common. One baby out of 3 died before their first birthday, and only one child in 2 saw their 21st birthday. So only half of you would get to 21. Unlike France, the English were not rigidly divided into social legal estates. However, there was a distinct social class system. Most English were poor farmers. A few were middle class, like the bourgeoisie of France. They lived, for the most part, in London. Still, a small few were aristocrats and usually owned large tracts of land in the English countryside. For both peasant and aristocrats, the soil was the key to the economy. Land was the source of livelihood and well-being. Having enough land to produce adequate food, or to produce enough to sell, or even to rent, was the key to economic survival. Traditions concerning land guided daily living. These traditions were designed to ensure the stability and welfare of the greater community. Hence, marriages and inheritance were geared to maintaining family property intact. Marriages were always arranged by parents to maintain or better the economic status of their sons or daughters. Not all could get married, however. A man had to generally own land on which to support a family before he even dared to marry. It was not uncommon for men to wait until their 30s when they inherited property from their parents, which enabled them to marry. If a woman did not bring land into the marriage, she had to have some kind of a dowry or money or something of that nature to pay the husband. Daughters who inherited property from their parents had to pass it on to their husbands. All land was given to the eldest son, the primogeniture is what they're called, while younger sons might receive cash payments or wait for their older brother to die. The main occupation of England was farming. In fact, about 80 to 90% of the people in the country were farmers. Compared to today, it's about 1% of people. Private and public lands were not separated by fences as they are today. Every village had a public area called the commons. This was land which was available for anyone for pasturing, hunting, and gathering firewood, growing crops, etc. So poor farmers who didn't own their own land, or they rented, they could eke out a marginal living by depending on the commons. Unlike France, most English peasants or farmers did own their own land, even though it was very small. Villages were connected by a system of dirt roads that became almost impassable during the wet season. As a result, transportation was often slow, and trade beyond the village was not easy. Most English farmers never visited any place further than 25 miles from their birthplace ever, so you would be lucky to see Troy. You would probably never see Spokane, if we're basing it off of how far you would travel from Moscow in your life. People made their own food, clothes, furniture, tools, and homes. There was no, Home Depot or no Amazon to order things from. You had to make it yourself. A few items which could not be produced could be obtained from wandering peddlers, who also brought with them the news of these distant lands of 30 miles away. Finally, for fuel, there were 2 sources, firewood and coal. Nearly every English village had a coal mining operation. These mines employed a small number of village dwellers, especially in the winter. Coal pits, from which coal was extracted, belonged to the owner of the property where the coal mine was situated. So over the next 100 years, a revolution that is as significant is the Neolithic Revolution, when early man turned from hunting and gathering to growing crops and agriculture, will completely change life in your village. Some historians believe that this revolution, the Industrial Revolution, is the most fundamental change in all of the 400,000 years of human history. We will experience some of these changes in the next few hours. Go ahead and finish up all the things on the board, and then you should pause this video when it's done, and we're going to go to round 1. Okay, so this is what things should look like. Somewhat. Okay. Yeah. We're going to do round 1. So we're going to be adding some things to your paper. Okay, it is now 1745. England's geography is unique in that no section of the country is more than 90 miles from the sea, and there are many navigable rivers that crisscross the countryside. An enterprising young capitalist, you, decides to invest some money in the construction of a canal in this village. This is not a public venture, but rather a private one. The profits from your canal are astonishing. For example, one canal built in 1745, the Oxford Canal, yielded a 300% annual return for its investors for a period of more than 30 years. That meant if you put $10 in, you would get, $30 back. Although it would have been more than that. I don't know why I use that example. This new revolution in transportation reduced the prices of raw materials and reduced the cost of transportation drastically. Coal could now be transported from the mines to the towns for half the price of a horse wagon transportation. Since you invested your money, thereby making a tidy profit, go ahead and build for yourself one nice home anywhere on the map, wherever you would like it to be. And this home can be as big as you want. I don't recommend making it too big. And you can do that. Don't forget to construct the canal. The canal needs to come out of your river and exit east or west off the page. Okay? So, you can build yourself one nice house. Build the canal. Cannot add another bridge. That's round 1. I'm going to pause here. Okay, round 2. It is now 1750. For a variety of different reasons, soap, diet, sanitation, there is a population explosion in England and in your village. The cursed bubonic plague, which for centuries wiped out your village, has been virtually eliminated due to the disposal of sewage in the canals and then ultimately to the ocean. So everybody has a lot better hygiene. Add 5 houses. So you should have 15 houses total with one nice home, your home. All right, round 3. It is 1760. The people of your village need a bit more food and goods to meet the needs of the new inhabitants. Coincidentally, a number of other noteworthy events occur around 1760. First, a number of new mechanical inventions for farming are developed. Perhaps the greatest impact was Jethro Tull's creation of the seed drill and the horse-drawn cultivator. Jethro Tull is actually a vocab word for your homework this weekend. Also, farmers began to experiment with new, more productive farming practices like crop rotation, new fertilizers, and new livestock breeding techniques. Consequently, farm production is significantly increased. There's a lot more food to go around. But there is one problem. Most farmers own one tract of land. Why should they or how could they invest in expensive machines when their land is so small? What's more, it's almost impossible to buy land from anyone. At the same time, pressure is placed on the government, Parliament, by large and small land-owning farmers to make more land available. Where is that land coming from? The Commons, of course. A series of laws called the Enclosure Acts are passed by Parliament. This means that landowners can buy pieces of common land from the government. So go ahead and take away half of your commons and add 5 houses and also one nice house. Round 4. It is now 1773. A man named Richard Arkwright invents a new machine that can spin and weave cloth 100 times faster than could be done by hand in a farm cottage, which was the most common way of producing cotton up until that time. It was called the cottage industry or the putting out system, which is also a vocab word in your book. Richard Arkwright calls his new machine the water frame, and you can see a picture of it right there. That is the water frame. It's called that because its principal source of power was water. So let's imagine that the first water frame is built in your village because you have that river. Since the water frame was large, a special building was needed, and thus the first factory for producing cotton cloth was built. So go ahead and add 1 factory, 5 houses for all these workers in that factory. The factory needs to be located on the riverbank. Canal water is not fast enough to power the water frame. It needs to be on the river. Do not add smoke to this factory. So on your key, you can see there's a little smokestack. Don't add it. All right, round 5. Here we go. It is now 1774. Workers are needed to work in this new factory. Since many people, women, cannot compete with the spinning and weaving of cloth made in the factory, and there are large numbers of poor families who have lost their livelihood due to the Enclosure Acts, the eliminating of the commons, we do have an available supply of workers. People move to your village to find work. Go ahead and add 15 houses, which means you should have 40 plus 2 nice houses. 1 church, 2 total now. 1 pub, 1 store. You may also draw additional roads and 1 additional bridge if you would like. The Enclosure Acts is also a vocab word, so is eliminating the commons and putting all the farms together. All right, round 6. It is still 1774, but the profits from the first textile factory are enormous. Textiles are for clothes and cotton. It should be no surprise that Richard Arkwright is referred to with 2 titles, the first millionaire and the father of the factory. New factories are built in your community. Go ahead and add 5 new factories for 6 total. They all need to be on the river. The early owners of these factories called themselves capitalists because they believed that they had the capital or the money to purchase the raw material, the building, the water frame, and pay their workers a fixed wage. Which, by the way, with all these workers, you need to add 5 houses. Okay, round 7. It is 1780. Unemployed workers from surrounding areas flood into your community looking for work. Although wages are very low, they look attractive to starving families. Housing is in great demand for the first time, and a new kind of housing is constructed called tenements, also a vocab word. Here, dozens of families reside under one roof. This is what the tenement looks like here. This is a photo. It's basically these apartments that have tiny, tiny, tiny rooms. Probably, they're the size, they're about like 10 by, 10, very small rooms. Add 5 tenements.